What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the Just Gonna Say It podcast on Tuesday. Usually we do these at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Today we're doing it at noon because we have things to do and we are busy around here. And I had to figure out a way to still get this done today. So here we are at noon and we're going to see. Maybe this is cool. Maybe people like it at noon. I don't know. We'll just have to see. The reason I picked 4 o'clock in the first place is because it didn't get in the way of my work day. So I basically did the podcast after work. But because of the way we're structuring things around here now, I'm a little more flexible. So we're gonna try some stuff and see if people enjoy a different time. Who knows what? As usual, these live streams are ad free. So that means you can use DylanTalksTone.com to support the channel by going and buying pickups or guitars. We have one guitar left, that one right there, because the other one sold, and so that's very cool. We also have, and it's on sale, by the way, so shoot me a message. I would blow that out to you this week. We also have some other cool stuff coming up in the next few weeks, which is going to be neat. And yeah, there you go. You can also use a super chat. You can ask a bunch of questions, etc. So the subject for today, this keeps coming up. This whole idea that I think guitar players need to catch up. It's 2025. It's the 21st century. Like literally the 21st century. It's been the 21st century for 25 years. For literally a quarter of a century, it's been the 21st century. And still, people are all up in here talking about guitar stuff like it's the 70s. And so I want to talk about that a little bit today. Now, this is not an idea. The idea of this is to not tell you, oh, I think you should, embrace all these weird technologies and you should have modelers instead of tube amps and all that kind of stuff. This is not that. I think you should have whatever you want, right? Like, I think you should buy what you enjoy. That's the whole point of playing guitar. But I do think that some of the myths and misconceptions about guitar stuff that we deal with every day that limit us as guitar players are based on old news. They're based on stuff that doesn't apply anymore. They were based on science in the Middle Ages, but they're not based on science anymore because science and technology and physics have moved on. And so all these various things, because I hear this all the time. We get this a lot. Like, I'm big into carbon fiber. Well, I played an Ovation. That's not carbon fiber. Well, I played a pod in that's not a modeling amp. Like there's so many things that we talk about as guitar players. And so here's what I'd like for you to do. Get in the chat today and tell us the things that you can think of that probably have changed as a result of technology and time marching on. The guitar players have not realized or have not allowed themselves to realize or have stuck in their own ways, not because it could literally be just ignorance. Like, people didn't realize that fuel injection works now. Like there was a time, I'm a car guy. There was a time in the 80s, everybody knows I'm a Volkswagen Audi guy, where if you bought a fuel-injected Audi, it basically meant the car was barely going to work. If you had at the very beginning, now there's internet groups and there's like, here we go. This is all about time, right? So if you, of course, when I grew up, so let's say late 80s, early 90s, I'm looking at used Audis from the early 80s, mid 80s. And they've got K-Jetronic and J-Jetronic fuel injection, which is this mechanical / electronic mix of fuel injection, because that's all there was. And it was a pain in the butt. It broke all the time. It clogged a lot because gas wasn't that great, et cetera. And so all of a sudden, it's the enemy. Nothing like any kind of technology. ABS brakes sucked. I remember my boss had an ABS Chevy truck with ABS in the rear only. And like 1989, Chevy put them on the rear only. And they sucked. It was terrible. That's not the case anymore. Like, technology has moved on, and we can really rely on this stuff to give us the results that we want. And the guitar industry has done this, or has attempted to do this. But the problem is that guitar players do not pay attention or ignore, or maybe because of genuine ignorance, they just don't know that. And I don't mean ignorance as in like you're a moron ignorant. I mean like when you don't know something is going on around you, you are ignorant to it, right? So that's what I'm talking about. That these things have moved along. Material sciences have advanced. Things are different now. And so when you tell somebody, hey, you know what, you should try X or Y, or have you tried X or Y? Well, I tried one in 1984. It just doesn't apply anymore. That just does not fly. Period. Just does not fly. Super chat from Dastardly Dave. Thank you so much, sir. Happy Tuesday, all. Thank you so much for that. So a lot of the stuff just doesn't apply anymore. I'm so old, I can remember when gas pumps only went to 99 cents, and leaded fuel was still sold. I remember that. Yeah, absolutely. I think by the time I started driving, you could get leaded fuel at a couple of places. Like, it wasn't everywhere, but it was still in some of the more rural places you could still get it. Yeah. So, but that's the kind of thing that we're talking about here. That's exactly the kind of the mentality. So, and I know that, okay, so you just gave your age in a way. But I also know that you're not like searching around for regular gas in 2025. You're not searching around. You're not like, well, regular gas is still better than unleaded because blah, 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 blah. Like, I know you're not. So why do we as guitar players do that? So let's get into a few things. So, first of all, let's talk finishes, right? Everybody wants to say that urethane finishes on guitars are these thick, gloppy things that kill tone, right? So, especially on acoustic instruments, the science of wood moving is really, really important, obviously. And so the thickness of the finish needs to be engineered, right? But there are so many finishes now. One of the reasons this came up is because, and I've talked about this before on the channel. I used to be in auto finishing, like I did a bunch of auto finishing stuff, and I remember, everybody remembers when like the white paint came off all the Chevy trucks and the primer was underneath there. Some of you may remember the early 80s when if you ever got a car repaired at about 2 years, the paint would start to check and start to, like, wherever it was refinished, started to check and look like this little, desert floor where it had all these little check marks in it, like an old guitar. That's because there was a lot of compatibility issues between finishes. Because let's face it, anything that was painted in the 50s and the 60s, they were just using anything with guitars, anything. They were using leftover parts from other industries, including auto finishes. So that's why we had nitrocellulose. Nitrocellulose was not done because the tone, bro. It wasn't because of that. It wasn't because the wood breathed. It was because it's what they had. It was the 40s and the 50s, and that's what you painted stuff with. Nitrocellulose was the thing that you used. Well, as they got to realize that was much more dangerous, that it was much more expensive, and that it was much more difficult to make. And then when you start to get into where you're trying to get the VOC down on paint. You're trying to get the particulates out of the air that go into the paint. So in the mid 80s, especially, they started to really work on when you painted something, the percentage of the finish that actually got onto the thing that you were painting and did not fly around in the air was important. Nitrocellulose, a lot of it flies around in the air. Also, the availabilities of the plasticizers and et cetera. So the nitrocellulose that we have today versus what we had in the 60s and 50s is not the same either, because the formulation is different, because we started to figure out, oh, hey, guess what? All that stuff gives you cancer. And, all these painters are dying because, so all those things made it to where, whether you agree with that or not, whether you agree that should change or not, whether you think that it matters whether guitars pollute the air or not, is irrelevant. The bottom line is that changed. When that changed, there was a lot of, oh crap, we have to figure this out. So how do we get paint to not fly around in the air as much? Well, it has to be thicker. So in the early 80s, in the mid 80s, you could buy a guitar, and if you bang the corner of a neck pocket, like a neck plate on a Strat, and that little thing chipped off, it was pretty thick, right? But it's interesting, it's still just as thick now because of the way they do things. We'll get into that in a minute. But that's kind of it. But that doesn't mean that in 2025, urethane finishes are super thick. There are many, 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 and it's not just urethane anymore. There's what I think that's a lot of people don't realize is it's not just nitrocellulose and polyurethane. It's not. There are many, many different kinds of coatings that can be used for musical instruments that are thin, that are inexpensive, more inexpensive. All paint is expensive. The application time is shorter. The cycle time of it is shorter, so therefore it's easier to manufacture things. All those things come into play, so therefore they've made these changes. So when you buy, let's see, if you buy a new Taylor guitar with a polyurethane finish, it is not the same polyurethane finish that a 1985 Stratocaster has on it. It's not the same. It's very thin. It works very well. They wouldn't use it if it didn't, and it's fine. So obviously we have the aging thing, right? So nitrocellulose obviously ages. It's nice. I personally like how it feels. I like how I don't want to say it's sticky, but you know what I'm talking about. Like an Epiphone versus a Gibson, the finish feels different. It's just got a different, I don't know, there's just a different tactile nature to it that I like. So I think it's cool, but it's not necessary, right? There's no reason to avoid an instrument because of the finish that is on it in 2025. It's a big one. This is a big one that people still go on and on and on about. Let's see. Red or a color with red pigment is real expensive. There are other colors that are real expensive now too. It's, and the other thing too is, what's been a lot of fun is that a lot of these finishes now you could do a lot of fun things with, right? So it doesn't have to be these pastel colors. When we say pastel, so in auto finishes, a pastel color is something that doesn't have any extra properties to it. So no micas, no pearls, no metallics, like straight red. So like Dakota red, seafoam green, surf green, those are technically called in auto finishing pastel colors because they don't have any sparkle in them. So now in 2025, you can do lots of fun stuff and still have the finish be awesome and usable on an instrument. Texas Toast guitars, for example, I always talk about them, but it's because I know a lot about their processes. Their finish is very thin, and it's not nitrocellulose. You can get a nitrocellulose guitar from them, I believe, but it costs a lot more. The finish is much, much thinner. Now, this is an interesting thing because people talk about, well, nitrocellulose is so thin. It's not. Here's why. The sanding sealer, for example, and I know this for sure. this is not a rumor, for sanding sealer, for example, that they use at Fender is the same on this Stratocaster with a urethane finish and this Stratocaster with a polyurethane finish, or with a nitrocellulose finish. Same thickness, same build, same everything. And then you just spray nitrocellulose over it. So tonally and the wood breathing and all that is a bunch of garbage because the same sealer is on it. So what you're really getting in 2025 when you buy a nitrocellulose finish is not a thinner finish. It is not a more breathable finish, which is hilarious anyway. It is a finish that feels and looks different. That's all you're getting. You're getting a aesthetic choice, which you may be very important to. It is to me. I really, really like it. On some things. On some things I don't care. I have a couple of acoustic guitars that are nitrocellulose. I have a couple of acoustic guitars that are urethane. And they feel the same to me. On an acoustic guitar, I don't really care either way. But if I take an Epiphone 335 and a Gibson 335 and I play them side by side, I don't even want the Epiphone. It feels like a plastic guitar to me. I just don't like it, which is really funny because we're going to get into carbon fiber here in a minute. And everybody thinks that's plastic. We'll get into that conversation too. But that's the thing. It's just really a feel and an aesthetic choice, which is really fun. But there's no point in arguing about which is better. So, do you like this one? Do you like this one? Just buy it. So, catch up to 2025 when it comes to the technology that goes into guitar finishes. Whatever, and I would say this across the board for most legitimate guitar companies. So, if there is a guitar company out there from, Knockoffistan, you don't know whether what they use. Like they won't disclose it. There's a lot of things, but if it is a reputable company who actually puts time and thought into what they're doing. So the big three, obviously Gibson, PRS, and Fender, they do this on their core models, like on their, their real, no, I don't want to say real I don't want to belittle their budget lines because their budget lines are very good. But they have less control. Like Fender, for example, has less control over the build specifications of their import models because of the way their manufacturing works and their plants that they hire to do such things. Okay, so that's the thing. But when we're talking about a standard Telecaster, standard Stratocaster, whatever they call the American one now, I have an AVR, American Vintage 2. And it's nitrocellulose, but if you got a made in Mexico one that had a urethane finish on it, if you got a, do the Ultras come with nitrocellulose or urethane? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Either way, it doesn't matter. You're going to get a great guitar and it's going to work, right? It's going to be engineered correctly. So are flamed cover without etching cheaper or the same as the ones with the design? I think they're $10 cheaper, but I can't remember. To be honest with you, I think they're $10 cheaper. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but off the top of my head, but I can't remember. So yes, all these things, heck, I don't even want to know what goes into the food dyes I eat. Exactly. Yeah, for sure. As I sit here and drink a Coke, and then you can pour the rest of it on your driveway and you get oil off your driveway with it. Or clean your battery terminals. So there's that. Okay. So we have that. Finishes are definitely a thing. What else? What else do we want to talk about when it comes to myths that we should get away from? Well, let's talk about building materials. Let's talk about the actual materials that you use to build a guitar. So I'm a big carbon fiber guy. I love carbon fiber. I think it's awesome. I have 4 carbon fiber acoustic guitars, and they're great for different reasons. They're 2 different brands. I have Close and I have McPherson, and they're awesome. Enya is a Chinese knockoff brand that is okay if you want to get one for $500 or whatever. They're kind of neat. What else? You can get those on Amazon. What else? There's a few other companies. What's the one with the wood and carbon fiber top on it? I can't remember what they're called. And then that's not Rain Song. And then you've got Rain Song. They've got that too. And every time I post things, people are like, every time there's some ding dong in the comments who's like, well, plastic guitars are stupid. Well, okay, it's not plastic. Okay, so I know that you're being an idiot. You're not actually wanting to have an intelligent conversation about this. But for the rest of us, let's have an intelligent conversation about it. What does an acoustic guitar have to do? When you strike the string, it has to move to transmit energy to a box that moves air, just like a drum. So in 1985, 83, you could buy an Ovation with a wood top, and it had a plastic bowl back. It was a composite, but it was basically plastic. Personally, I think they sounded terrible. My dad loved them. He had like 4 of them. I was never a fan of those guitars. I never liked them. Mostly because when you sat on your lap, they would like slide down because the back was round. And they had the little leg dent, but it wasn't that great. I just never liked those guitars. And they felt like they were sprayed with undercoating on the back, remember? So I wasn't really ever a fan of those. I didn't think they sounded great at all. So for anybody who says, I played an Ovation in 1985 and it sucked, I agree. I agree with you. I don't think they were that great. But this is not 1985. This is 2025. We're 25 years into the 21st century. All an acoustic guitar has to do is when you introduce a vibration to it, it has to vibrate and move air. It is a very simple process. This is not rocket science, okay? This is not like, it's like so easy. Guitars, the technology that goes into guitars is so simple. So for someone to say, you know what? Material sciences has moved on to the point where we can measure and we can duplicate the motion of a thickness of piece of wood in a synthetic material. It's not that far-fetched, actually. Here's why. In aviation, for many years, decades, actually, they have been, and for those of you that are familiar with this stuff more than I, you might be able to get in the comments and speak to this. But I've done a lot of research about it. They can put sensors basically everywhere in a piece of carbon fiber, whether that is a wing surface, like a surface of a control surface, or a structural piece, when it comes to some sort of internal structure, ribbing or whatever. They can put sensors on all this stuff. Do you guys remember, if you've watched this is a fail, but the Titan submarine that imploded and killed those people, they're going to see the Titanic. But if you watch those documentaries on that, they put all these sensors around the inside of it. And they could hear when single fibers of carbon fiber, because it's a fabric, right, would snap. They could hear it. They could tell what was going on. A vibration, a motion that you could not even see or feel, like if you put your hand on it, but they could measure it. So they've been doing this in aviation. They've been doing it in marine. They've been doing it in racing. Formula One cars, they have sensors at the end of their wings and on their winglets and on all the stuff, like the front wing and the rear wing. And they can tell, Ferrari's been doing this for decades. They can tell at what speed, with what downforce, how much a wing is going to deflect. And actually, Formula One has rules that at certain speeds, that a wing can only deflect so many millimeters. And if it's 1 millimeter out of spec, your car is disqualified. So these things can be measured. Material sciences have moved along. And if a person is willing to invest themselves and money into it, you can do with synthetic materials what anybody could do with wood materials 50, 60 years ago. Anybody could do it. As long as they're willing to invest the time into figuring it out. I think we'd be open to have a Gibson style guitar with an alternative neck material that has minimum movement, but I don't think I'd pay a 25% premium for it. So this is the issue, right? Some of these material sciences cost money. They do. They're expensive. Carbon fiber is not cheap, right? It's I'm actually working with some right now, and I'm working with a guy in Lithuania who makes some carbon fiber that I'm interested in. And the stuff's not cheap. It definitely isn't, because of the research that goes into it. When you start to look at vibration and structure and all that kind of stuff, it is not an inexpensive material to work with. I also have a lot of experience with bicycles, and the rigidity of it / comfort / vibration, like all those things are engineered into a bicycle the same way, like how the fiber is laid, all that kind of stuff. But the point is, it can be done. McPherson is an excellent example of this. The reason I am so into McPherson is because he's done this. Not because, again, goes back to the exact same thing with guitar stuff, how guitar stuff has been for many, many years, is that the things that we do with guitars are leftovers from other industries, right? A lot of the technology. So, for example, the carbon fiber stuff, if you talk to Matt McPherson owns Matthews Archery. So if you ever could do it right now in a separate screen, Google Matthews Archery and look at the bows that he makes. And his idea was, if I can, the whole point with a bow is to stop vibration, because you don't want vibration that's not meant to be there, because what happens is then the accuracy of the bow is compromised because there's motion in the string that shouldn't be there. So you don't want that. But as you can imagine, once you develop that technology to stop it, you could also start it. So now you could say, okay, I know how to not make it vibrate. Let's go backwards, do it the other way, and control the vibration with various things. And so, like my acoustic guitars, they have a carbon fiber top, they have a carbon fiber composite back, and then on the inside, it doesn't have, because of the structural stability of carbon fiber, you don't have to have like a bunch of bracing. But what it does have is this piece of Nomex, which is what they put on the belly of the space shuttle. And it's cut in, it looks sort of, it's weird. It looks sort of like an ink blot, actually, underneath there. And it's like glued to the top to give it rigidity and also to control where the top vibrates and how much. Because there's engineering that can go into that stuff and make it happen. And it works. It's really, really neat. And that guitar sounds amazing. Now, there are biases against it by certain guitar players who just see, quote unquote, a plastic guitar and say that it will never sound like wood, which isn't true. We've done lots of blind tests on our channel. And I will tell you, in all the blind tests we've ever done and the thousands of views that those videos have gotten, only one person has ever guessed correctly. In all the thousands of views that we've ever gotten on carbon versus wood and all this kind of stuff, because I love doing those videos. I think they're fun. So every time we get a new wooden, cool acoustic guitar around here, we'll do that and we'll do comparison stuff. Thousands of views we've ever gotten, all the comments ever, only one person has ever guessed it right. Ever. Which tells you that the technology is there to be effective enough that normal people cannot tell the difference between a carbon fiber instrument and a wooden one. And even if they could, it still doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is because it sounds good. If it sounds good, it is good. If it sounds a little different, that's totally fine. We don't want every guitar to sound exactly the same, but it sounds good. And if it sounds good, it is good. End of story. It's not that hard. So yeah, new guitar tech is cool. Take the Spark Go, for example. What a fun little amp. That sounds great. I agree. So actually I'm going on a road trip and I always take my Spark Mini with me. I'll probably take my Spark Go this time because I have a little less room. But yeah, I always take it with me. It's a great little thing. Okay, is it a Marshall stack? No, absolutely not. But that's not what it's for. What I figure is, so here's what I usually travel with. I usually travel with my McPherson Touring, which is the smaller McPherson carbon fiber guitar. I usually take that with me. I love that thing. So I always have an acoustic, right? And then I'll take a cable and one of my Spark amps, but no electric, in case I run into an electric guitar along the way that I want to play. It always happens. I'll be hanging out with some friends and they'll be like, hey, check out this cool guitar. Or like, I think I'll be meeting up with my dad, and my dad, I'm sure, will have some guitar with him. And so it'll be cool to just be like, hey, this is great. I have a little amp with me, and it's awesome. It's great. It's, is it a recording amazing? Actually, for recording, it's very good. Can you play live with it? Not really. I mean, you can jam around the living room and stuff with it. It's cool. It does great. Plug it into a USB thing and it records well. You're right. They're awesome. I gig with a guitar. Let's see. Graham says, I gig with a guitar that the internet seems to hate. An Indonesian-made Fender Acoustasonic, but it has been brilliant. Made my solo gigs more comfortable and better, and sounds great through a PA. Those Acoustasonic guitars, they do get a bad rap by everyone who does not own one. Not everyone. By folks who do not own them. Every person I know who's bought one loves it for exactly the thing that you said, because it's one guitar that does like 5 jobs, and you can go to a coffee shop, you can go to some sort of live gig, maybe a praise and worship setting, maybe who knows what, doesn't matter. And you can use that guitar and it will do the job of 5 guitars reasonably well, right? Is it a direct replacement for any of those 5 guitars? Not really. But it is like, to me, it's like, I'm a motorbike guy. It's like the KLR 650 of guitars, right? That is like it's like a cheap adventure bike. They're like $8,000 or something. I had one. I put like 30,000 miles on it a couple years. It didn't ever do anything amazing. It was not a sport bike. It was not a dirt bike. It was pretty good on a gravel road. But you could ride it anywhere, in any weather, in any situation. It never broke down. You never had a problem with it. And it would do all of those things. It would give you a reasonable facsimile of each of those things, enough to be able to enjoy any genre of friend. So if I had a sport bike friend, I could go ride with him on a Sunday. If I had a dirt bike friend, unless he was like a rock crawler guy, I could go ride with him on a Saturday. I could do whatever I wanted. And that Acoustasonic is that. They are really, really cool. That's an excellent example of a guitar that seems dumb, and folks from the 1970s and 80s will think it's dumb because it doesn't look traditional. But in 2025, let's face it, and we'll talk about this when we get into amps. In 2025, what especially working guitar players do with their instruments is different than what we did in the 80s. So when we start talking about guitar, amps and stuff, we'll talk about that. Yeah, it does the jobs. Yeah, see, everybody who has an Acoustasonic in here, says they're awesome. Yeah. No, this is great. This is exactly what we're talking about. Spark Go. Let's see. I was going back through these comments in case somebody said something. Okay, so this is a great segue, actually. The Acoustic Sonic is a great segue into amps. The other reason this is another big area in 2025, a quarter of the way into the 21st century, where guitar players they need to catch up. Okay. They need to catch up. I'm sure you have a friend. You're like, I'm not going to play Helix because I had a pod in 2005 even. And it was terrible. Yeah, they kind of were. But even back then, the pod, when it was new, was sort of like the acoustic sonic of amps. Could we make that comparison? Like, it wasn't that great. They never really were that great. But the folks that wanted them needed them for something. And they served a purpose, and they were really cool. And what's interesting is, back then, the people that were using pods were the professional arena musicians. Like, they were using them because they were like super versatile. What's the other one? Dang it, what's the name of that thing? Sans amp. Remember the Sans amp thing was like stripped that long, had like 8 buttons on it, and you could get a few different models of them. They were another thing that was like, they weren't really a modeler. They weren't really a multi-effects unit. They weren't really an amp. That's why they were called Sans amp. But they did that thing that people needed them to do. And you would talk to bass player. A lot of bass players use them. And you would talk to touring musicians, and they would use them because they made their rigs simpler. They were like a thing that did a thing. Now, you or I, who play at home, who just like wants to stand in front of Marshall because we can in our garage because we live in the woods, or, I can't, but we'll get to that in a minute too. We wouldn't buy one of those because, we have a music room. We have a garage. We're a garage band. We want to be loud and piss off the neighbors, and the cops will come. Like, that's the whole point. But in 2025, it's not the way life is anymore, right? You have, most of us have homeowners associations and, I don't know, condos and apartments, and we rent. I don't, but we did for a long time. I lived in a motorhome. I had a tube amp in a motorhome, and I could never play it because like the walls of the motorhome are so thin. So you'd like, it'd be so loud the whole place would hear it. So yeah, let's see. The criticism I've seen about the acoustic sonic is, for the money, one could get a decent electric and a decent acoustic too. But that still, Alan, does not solve the problem. The money's not the problem. So this is another thing. We should talk about this too. In 2025, money's not an issue. It's not. There is an instrument for every price range. Okay. Now, whether your ego will allow you to play the guitar that is in your price range and tell your friends about it, that's a whole nother story. That's, 1-800-BETTER-HELP. That's that whole thing. But to get the job done, there is a price range of guitar for everyone. And so if you need the tool, you will buy the tool. So whether it's $2,000 or $5,000 or $200, if you need the tool, you will buy the tool. So it's not about the money. A professional musician, in fact, I've spoken to a lot of guys about this. We'll talk about the acoustic sonic specifically. So I have a few friends who have them, and they play, they gig 4 or 5 times a month. And I have asked them, and I remember having, because we have text threads and all of us hang out and, hey, I'm about to buy this guitar. What do you think? Which one should I get? Whatever, wherever we're all just hanging out, talking. I mean, in real life though, not like on forums and crap. I mean, like my actual friends. I got a good friend, Will, who has one. We actually had his Acoustasonic on the channel. And it's like, should I get the cheaper one or should I get the more expensive one? Well, it's not what it's worth. It's not, is it worth it? It's what do you need? What's the tool? It's a tool. So, and it's fun. So it's a toy also. Because musical instruments are toys. We play them. They are toys. So, and, all of them are a luxury. All of them. So what do you need? Well, if I buy the cheap one, I can buy the cheap one. It's no big deal. But then I don't have this, and this feature. I really kind of want that and that feature. It's way more expensive. Yeah, but I really kind of want that feature. Okay. Because, the pickup was way better and the switchgear did a lot more. Like there was a lot more it was much more feature rich, actually. For those of you who don't know, both guitars, the Mexican one and the American one, exactly the same. Structurally, exactly the same. My buddy actually designed that guitar, and I can tell you for sure, exactly the same. Okay. The electronics is the difference. The mistake they made with that guitar is they priced them so far apart and then wanted to make a cheaper one. They had to strip something out because the guitar itself was exactly the same. So they had to figure out a way to put some cost delta between them. And basically what it was strip a bunch of features out of the pickup because that's the only difference in the guitar. So that's what they did. And he's like, well, I'm going to pay all the money because I want the whole thing. And he got it, and it was amazing. Now, his is an early one, and it broke. It actually cracked. The top cracked. Fender fixed it. It was no big deal. They took care of him, but yeah, it was no big deal. It was a big deal, but it ended up not being a big deal. So for the money, to me, I wish that's another thing I wish guitar players would just stop saying. For the money is a dumb phrase. Buy the guitar you need or the guitar you want. End of story. End of story. If you cannot currently afford the guitar you need or want, save up for it. Put it on a credit card. I don't know. Stop whining though. And don't buy the Chinese knockoff thing from Knockoffistan and tell everybody that it's just as good as this other one for the money, because it's not. And you know it's not. And you're trying to tell yourself that because you really wanted the better one. So 2025, that's what we need to do. Such a BS topic. It's like saying violinists need to get over classical music, blah, blah, blah. Buy my crap is what I really hear. Well, I never said buy my crap. We've not talked about my products at all whatsoever. And it's not about the music. We're all playing different kinds of music. It has nothing to do with the music. It has to do with the flexibility of a musician to understand what's going on in 2025, that what they think about an instrument or what they think about a technology surrounding that instrument from 40 years ago no longer applies. That's what this is about. To be honest with you, my products are the most old-fashioned thing in this conversation. Like me and my wife talk about that all the time. Like, I make the most old-fashioned thing. I love modern stuff. I love looking at progress of technology. It's really fun, but it sucks because I make the most old-fashioned thing possible. But I still think it's neat. So it's not to say we don't want to forget about it. We don't want to not like that old stuff anymore because it's cool. But a lot of folks have a lot of preconceived ideas about things that no longer apply because technology has marched forward. That's really what it is. That's really what it is. Let's see. I like mine. It's good at a lot of things, but great at nothing. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep. No, that's exactly right. Okay. So let's talk about, let's talk more about our BS topic since, whatever his name, what is his name? Oh, Pacific Northwest Jeeper 01. Oh, dude. I've had a couple of Jeeps. They're kind of cool. Okay. So, I'm real ready for Dylan Piezos for my Acoustasonic. I'm not going to do it. I think the Acoustasonic is fantastic the way it is. And so speaking of technology that we'll never get into, a lot of that stuff I won't. I would never do an acoustic. I don't want to say never because, never is never. But I do not see myself ever making a acoustic pickup. I do not see myself making any kind of piezo thing because there are people out there that really do that stuff, and I like what they do. I think everything that we've done has sort of been problem solving and exploration on my own that I've really enjoyed to do. So, but we're not talking about my stuff today, right? Let's not piss off the Pacific Northwest, right? We're not talking about my stuff. We're just talking about a lot of this technology stuff. So let's talk about amps, because if we're getting into things in 2025 that have changed a lot, the use case for amplifiers, like the philosophy of use for an amplifier, has changed a lot in the last 20 years. I would venture to say that all of us, if we had it our way, I know this is how I feel, and I'm probably not speaking out of turn here to say that you probably feel the same way. If you had it your way, you would probably love to have a room. Maybe you do. I don't right now, but maybe you do have, and it would be awesome if I had. I would love to have a room somewhere where I could have an AC30. I could have a Plexi. I could have a Black Panel Princeton, I don't know, early 60s super reverb, all these old tube amps, right? Like the legit ones. And have them in a room, be able to play them as loud as you want. That'd be so cool. I would love that. I think all of us would love that. I think anybody who says, you know what, I'm a guitar player and I like guitar stuff, we probably would love that, right? So we're not saying that stuff is bad. We're not saying, like the Pacific Northwest guy here, that we're saying that classical music is dumb or that wooden violins are dumb. We're not saying that at all, because we love that stuff. I think everybody who is a real guitar player, let's not say a real guitar player, a real guitar enthusiast, loves that stuff. I think it's awesome. We all want vintage instruments. We all want vintage amps, I'm sure, right? And you might say, well, I don't really want it because I can't afford it. But let's take all that away. Let's just emotionally, I think we all would. I think it'd be super fun. So that's great, right? But then the but comes in. First of all, cost, obviously, that's a thing. Second of all, philosophy of use. What do you use your amp for? Where do you live? Do you live in an apartment? Do you live in a condominium? You don't have to say this. We're not talking about where you actually live, but a lot of folks who play guitar live in apartments. They live in condos. They live in neighborhoods. I have a house, but I can throw a rock and hit my neighbor's house. We have a big lot, but still, if I turn up an amplifier in my garage, all my neighbors are going to hear it. My neighbor across the street has a CTSV Cadillac with a super gnarly exhaust and all the stuff. Like it's tuned. It's really cool. And every morning when he starts it, you can hear it. Like it's loud. So I'm pretty sure that if I had what I would really like is a brown face Vibroverb. I used to have one. I miss that amp. 40 watts, 210s. And if I play that thing at full chat, everybody around me is going to hear it. So it's just not practical, right? And we all know that tube amps really work better when you play them the way they're supposed to be played. And that is at the edge of or beyond breakup or just below if you are. But you really should have those things on song for them to really sound good, which means even a 5 or 10 watt, even a Princeton at, 10 or 13 watts or whatever, is going to be loud. Even a Blues Junior is loud, right? They're loud. A Pro Junior, those darn things are loud. So they're too loud for an apartment. They're too loud for a condo. They're too loud for a lot of things, right? So what does that mean? It means you got to figure out a way to get that sound or something close to it that is more practical. And that's where you come into, that's where you come into other stuff. Tonex killed amps for me. Yeah, so let's talk about that. So in the old days, you would have the pod, you would have the Sans amp, you would have all that stuff. And they did a thing. They were cool, but they weren't really good, right? And then the Kemper came along, and the Kemper was actually very good. There would be a lot of folks that would argue about it because they aren't objective when it comes to technology. This is why we're having this conversation. But the Kemper was actually really good. I had a mailbox one, and then I had the stage, and now I have a player. And I've had the Line 6 stuff is really good. I have a couple of Tonexes. I might have gave one of my Tonexes to one of my friends. So I think I have the big Tonex, the original one. Of course, I've got all the positive grid stuff. I've played basically all of the digital stuff, and it's kind of makes no difference, kind of all the same, right? They're running very similar processors. They're using different methodologies to model amps and stuff. And that stuff is progressing all the time. And I know the big objection for a lot of folks used to be, well, it's not good. Well, it's good now. The other objection would be, it costs too much, because they were like $1,800. Like, I think my first Kemper with a foot controller, the powered one, I think was close to $2,000. I had to sell basically everything, like all my amps and all my pedals and everything, to buy one. It was awesome. It was awesome. And then I ended up getting back into amps because I had a situation where I could use them. And then I missed it for the versatility. It's awesome to have 15, 20 amps at the push of a button. It's really, really cool. And somebody could say, well, it's not as good as the real thing. Well, okay. Okay. You're wrong, but I'll give you that. So if you think it's not as good as the real thing, okay, I'll give you that. Even though I don't agree. For me, the versatility outweighs that. The space savings outweighs that. The practicality outweighs that. And that was 10 years ago, right? Like, a Kemper was, they've been out a long time. And now the modeling that they use now is different. And it was way better. And now it's really, really difficult to argue against it for the practicality side. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a tube amp. I'm actually shopping for one right now. I think everybody should have all the things. But recognizing that what we have now is different than what we had 15 years ago, 10 years ago, is better. And then the other thing that folks would say is, well, but then there's this like planned obsolescence to it. And my argument to that would be, is there really? Because here's the thing. If your amp is this good, okay, and your Kemper is this good in your eyes, and then they make a software change and you download it, and then it's this good, right? And then it's this good. Like, what are we even arguing about here? You know what I mean? If this amp is this good and you're just inching to it, it's never going to be this good because the amp is only this good. The real amp is only this good. It's not going to be this good. It's just inching closer and closer to it. So a 10-year-old Kemper is going to be not as good as a new one, but it's not going to be like this. It's not going to be pod, right? A 10-year-old Kemper is going to be this good, and your new one's going to be this good. Like, so what are we even talking about here? You know what I mean? Let's see. Most people can't tell one modeler from the other anymore. No, it's true. That's what I'm saying, is that Nears makes no difference. They're kind of all the same. And Nears makes no difference unless you're just trying to be obtuse about it. The difference between that and a regular amp is so much the same anyway. It just kind of is. Let's see. Having a bunch of gear requires a lot of space and time and money for maintenance, tubes, cleaning, etc. I agree. But the UI on multi-effects needs some improvement. So it depends. Like the older ones and the cheaper ones, I agree. But if you pay the real money and get a good one, the UI thing kind of goes away, because then you have an iPad, which is money too, right? Like to have an external device like an iPad, that's another $1,000 or whatever they cost, right? So yes, there is money in it. I get it. But you could also have it on a computer. You could have it on an iPad. You can have it on a whatever. And then it gets really easy and it's actually really cool. And personally, I'm not saying I like it better than a real amp. My favorite amp that I have is my Princeton, because it feels like it's the Tone Master one, and it feels like a regular amp. I can go over there and turn knobs, and there's only 3 to turn, right? It's like bass, treble, volume. That's it. It's nice. You don't have option paralysis. You don't have confusion. You don't have to learn anything. It's awesome. And it's USB, not USB, but XLR into my interface, and I can record with it. That's what we use for all our videos. It's awesome. It's like walk in here in 2 seconds and you're recording. It's great. So that's really cool. And I really love that. And I think the practicality of that's really awesome. Do I still want a real one? Yeah, I do. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. That would be wild if they, let's see. I went to a gig last night and the guy was using a Princeton Reverb Tone Master and it sounded great. Yeah. Yeah. It does. It sounds awesome. The Headrush Flex Prime has the same processing power of the flagship, and it is $500. Yeah. So, and that's the cool part is now that the technology is sort of evening out, now you're just picking which UI is the best. You're picking. The one thing I would say with this, and the tip I would give you is, where are they in the development cycle for the particular product? So I would not buy, if it was me right now, I would not buy a regular Line 6 Helix because they just came out with this new one. Now, the old Line 6 Helix lasted a very, very long time, like a decade. So I personally wouldn't buy an old Line 6 Helix on Black Friday because that particular piece of hardware is at their end of its development cycle. But if you bought a new one, then you would have it for years and they would just give you software patches and it would just keep getting better and better and better and be awesome. And they probably will still support the old one, but you know, so there is that. Like everybody's like, well, I don't have to do that with my Plexi. Well, you're right, but you still have to buy tubes. And where are you buying your tubes? And how much does that cost? And are they any good? Because tubes suck now and it's hard to get them, right? Like that whole thing is a thing, you know. It's like buying leaded gas. Nobody uses a car that runs on lead gas anymore because it's stupid. You can't find it. So, you know, I'm not saying you shouldn't have them because they're great, but the use case is the thing. That's the thing. The practicality is the thing. Let's see. Does anybody else only buy gear with what it covers in mind? Like if you buy a guitar, it has to cover an area your others don't. That's interesting. That probably depends on where you are in your journey of guitar stuff. If you're at the beginning of your journey of guitar stuff, you're going to be like, well, my favorite guitar player plays a Strat, so I'm going to buy a Strat. My favorite guitar player plays a Les Paul, so I'm going to buy a Les Paul. And because I don't have enough money, I'm going to buy an Epiphone instead of a Gibson, right? Like that's kind of the decision-making paradigm that we're sort of all in at the beginning. Further down the road, maybe you're exploring stuff. Maybe you're like, you know what? I've never had X or Y guitar. I have a Strat. I really would like to try a Les Paul. Way further down the road, personally, this is where I'm at, is now I am at that point where I'm like, okay, I don't have X or Y guitar and I want the real thing. Okay. I'm at the point in my life where I want the real things. So I'm not going to buy an Epiphone version of something. I'm not going to buy a PRS SE something for my personal collection because I want the real thing. And it's going to be a thing that I don't sell. It's going to be a thing I don't flip. And I have to save up for it. You know, I bought a D18 and I bought a D28 in the last few years. And those are things that I had, you know, that's an investment. So you have to kind of plan that. But I don't care. I wanted to plan it because I wanted the real thing. Same thing with Les Paul. Like, you know, so that's where I'm at. It's the same thing what you're saying is I'm like, I don't have X or Y. I don't have an SG right now. So that is kind of my next. Well, I have an SG Junior, but that's a different department. So what are we covering here? I don't have an SG and I don't have a 335, but I'm less inclined to buy a 335 than I am an SG. So that's probably going to be the next kind of staple on the list, if that makes sense. However, I have other stuff going on in life right now. I had to build a deck last week. So, you know, those things kind of get pushed down. Yeah. No, it's super fun, you guys. This has been a fun conversation. I'm glad that we were able to hang out and talk about this stuff and enjoy talking about guitar stuff. Got to have some guitar overlap functionality-wise because I like more than just one color. That too, right? That too, for sure. Hey, man, this has been great. Thanks for coming and hanging out early. It looks like people enjoyed it. Let me know if this time slot for a live thing works better for you than the 4 o'clock on Tuesday. I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to be flexible with it. But thanks for hanging out, and we will see you in our next video. Like and subscribe and do all the things.